And here's an insider's brief about being a much better entrepreneur and business person. In fact, we're going to help you be better, faster, and smarter in the era of total disruption. We speak with Christian Boo Boucousis, a former fighter pilot and CEO of Afterburner. Hi, Boo, and welcome to the show.
Hey, Tony. Thanks very much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to get to spend this time with you.
It's great to see you again, and I appreciate you jumping on the show. Boo, let's take it from the top, and I'm just going to jump right in. Can you tell us about the evolution of thinking?
I love it. Simple question to a complex problem, but hopefully the solution made simple. The evolution of thinking is really a new way in which we as humans can embrace a world that's high speed, hyper digitalized, and really the word that most people use is disruption and change, but acknowledging that disruption and change is just the world and that is just the default. And if we evolve the way we think, we become far more comfortable in that environment. The model, the mental model, the cognitive model is a way of thinking that fighter pilots have been trained to do for decades. The evolution of that model is its application in day-to-day life, because whilst there's certainly a lot that you learn flying around at 2,000 kilometers per hour, some of it doesn't necessarily translate across seamlessly, particularly the rah-rah stuff about being a fighter pilot. But the way in which we approach a problem, the way in which we have to succeed and we successfully deliver on our objectives 98% of the time. So if you took away an airplane and you put in a business and you had the fighter pilot running it, that's your business achieving what it sets out to achieve 98% of the time. Now, a lot of people say to me, well, you know, being a fighter pilot, you're in control, you're in an amazing aircraft. It's an environment that you're very comfortable in. But that's not true. You're never comfortable in the environment. It is so dynamic and so fast and moves in 3 dimensions that when we look at how you have to think in those environments and apply it to a world that's much, slower, a little more calmer, what you find is you start to get ahead of your business, ahead of the problems. And what you start to see is disruption presents itself as opportunity. That's the evolution of thinking. It's a way of connecting how we feel to the way we think and the actions we do each and every day, but connecting it purposefully through the incorporation of what I call thought loops.
It's very interesting. And one of the things that I think about in going over this topic is kind of similar to like the jet fighter pilot, but in that you go let's just be very, very simple here. You go very fast, but for short, sustained periods of time. You're not going Mach 1 or Mach 2 nonstop forever. In our business world, however, it's different. We have to keep going fast no matter what. And there's no such thing as, what's that phrase, burnout or whatever. When we have to perform, we have to keep going. And I believe some of what you've tapped into is the secrets of sustained high performance.
Yeah, that's the difference between fighter pilot culture and high performance culture. As a fighter pilot, we have to perform all the time. Yeah, sure. We have a window of execution, which is the mission. When we hop into the airplane, do what we need to do and put the airplane back on the ground. But that's no different to a business either. Like most of the time in business is preparation, communicating, sharing knowledge, building systems and processes. It's no different. Let's look at sales and marketing, for example. If you're in sales, you're not on the phone for 8 hours making sales calls. If you're prospecting, sure, but that's not real. That's a different goal. That's just a quantitative goal, not a qualitative goal. If you own a cafe, then it's busy in the morning and there'll be a time period where you have to be on. But the lessons of being a fighter pilot, being prepared before you execute, reflecting on what happens each and every day. And that's the power of the evolution of thinking is actually the thought loops. It's our ability to reflect and ask, what happened today relative to what I was expecting? And why is there a gap between what I was expecting and what happened? And I have to be really analytical here and find just one reason. And when I figure out what that reason is, I have to do something about it. And when I mean do something, something has to move, something has to click. There has to be an action, not an idea or another problem where we kick the can down the road, but just one small action. So the thought loops and the genesis of this is what fighter pilots call the debrief or debrief culture. The genesis of this was the requirement for fighter pilots to learn very quickly and become effective very quickly, because we only get a few hours in the jet. The rest of the time is on the ground, and that time is actually getting smaller and smaller. So what we learned was the fastest way to learn is to have a culture which is very open and honest, called nameless and rankless, and within that culture to share the small reasons, the minor details as to why we didn't optimize our performance today. And in that environment, there's no right or wrong. In that environment, there's no repercussions to anyone's career, even if you break the rules, as long as you're able to diagnose and learn the skill of self-reflection and self-critiquing. That's the ultimate goal. And I've observed this. I've started and grown 4 companies to multi-million-dollar enterprises. And if you think about it, the likelihood of a business succeeding that never existed before is only about 10%, right? So if you look at doing that 4 times and 4 successes, you start to see it's nothing to do with me. It's the mindset that I was equipped with, where success is absolutely imperative to your survival.
Speaking of that mindset, you call it the GID. Can you tell us about the GID mindset?
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there that talk about getting things done, getting stuff done, or derivative of the S word. For me, it's getting it done, just one thing at a time, but lots of single things, and the ability to, people talk about, I don't know how to prioritize, I don't know which one thing I need to do. Well, the reality is when you start to incorporate thought loops and you start to debrief, the prioritization looks after itself. And if you're actually getting it done every day and you have 10 things and you get 10 done, you don't need to prioritize anymore because it's done. We prioritize things that aren't done yet. And that's the problem. And because we can't prioritize, they never get done, and therefore we don't know what to prioritize. But if your in tray is empty, if your project is over, there is nothing to prioritize anymore. It's finished.
I like that. That's very, very simple and direct and to the point. I like that. And I have one more question for you. From chaos to clarity?
That's what mindset's all about, because chaos is the default function. And I'm not sure if there's any astrophysicists or budding astrophysicists, but the one thing I remember from school, and I didn't do very well at school, was the universe tends toward entropy. That the default is to tend towards chaos. So to get from that state into clarity is purposeful, and we have to have a very clear understanding of where we're going. So chaos is not science. It's kind of like a fluffy cloud. What I call it's the kind of art of life, the art of execution, where we just have to have a general idea on where we're headed, but it needs to be obvious. So climbing a mountain is an obvious one. There's the mountain. I can see it. I'm going to get to the top. There's no ambiguity there. And then from there, the science of day-to-day execution, which is getting it done. And if you bring those two worlds together, you can control what you do. You can't control where you're going. But through the act of doing the right things each and every day, we navigate this course, this winding road that ultimately gets us to that destination. So from chaos to clarity requires purpose, a very clear, articulated idea of where you're going. And that's an idea, it's a story, it's gravity, it pulls you along. And then the discipline to run through these do loops every day, these thought loops, to course correct as the world changes around us.
Very simple. I love it. Makes great sense. Boo, where can our listeners go to find out more about this, find out more about you and what you do?
To find out more about me, it's very, very simple. Callmeboo.com is my website. And if you really want to do a deep dive into fighter pilot mindset or programs to help equip yourself and your team to really embrace it and hear the story, Afterburner.com is a wonderful place where you'll learn an inordinate amount about how fighter pilots think and do.
Sounds great. I'll put those on the show notes here on this episode. Boo, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Really appreciate it. Punchy, to the point, but I love it. That's how we work these days. Thank you so much.
Keep it simple. Thanks, Tony. Real pleasure.